So I recently recorded a live piano cover of the song Lost With You by Patrick Watson. This is a piano ballad and I recorded it right here in my home studio with just a MIDI keyboard, and it sounds like this.
Each other's arms, so we can grow over all the things we were before.
But as I was making this, I remembered that just a few years ago, when I tried to record like a solo piano ballad, it sounded more like this.
Places, ignorance and truth, cathartic residue.
So this video is for the old version of me that made that demo that you just heard. And if you write songs on piano and when you try to produce them, they end up sounding like that, then this video is for you as well. Because for the longest time, I just thought that no piano VST was ever good enough, and the reason that my piano ballads didn't sound good was because I needed a real piano. And of course, sometimes there really is no replacement for a real upright or grand piano, but if you do the right things, VSTs can take you a long, long way. And honestly, at the end of this video, I'm going to show you what is arguably a benefit to using MIDI as opposed to real pianos. So there are three things that got me from point A to point B. One is the actual piano part that I'm playing. Two is sound design, and three is everything else. Let's get into it. Okay, so part one is just the piano part itself. So some of you might roll your eyes at this part, but honestly, it's really important. There is no sound design or mixing or anything else that will save you if the piano part that you've written and that you're playing is incredibly boring. First of all, this video is really geared towards like singer-songwriter music, so I'm assuming that you've like written a song on a piano or keyboard, and the plan is to like play that as MIDI, not to be like writing things in a piano roll. There is a place and a time for that, but there's really just no substitute for the realism of actually playing a part on even a MIDI keyboard. And now I realize I have a kind of fancy MIDI keyboard. Honestly, I don't use 90% of its functionality. I'm just gonna link in the description a few recommendations for more budget MIDI keyboards. So with all that out of the way, you still have to make sure that the actual piano part that you're playing is interesting. If this is gonna be a piano ballad, that means that there aren't gonna be a lot of other instruments carrying the song. So that little example that I shared earlier, I don't really remember what the chords were, but I was just doing this. I was going, those definitely weren't the chords, but you get the idea. There is nothing you can do in mixing and sound design and stuff to fix that. Playing simple block chords can be nice, and you don't have to be playing some fancy arpeggios all the time, but little bits of variation and intrigue and just little changes to the patterns that you're playing can really go a long way in making a piano part like so much more interesting. So here's a super brief little crash course. Just experiment around with chord voicings. You don't have to play a C like this. You can play it like this, or with the 5 or the 3 in the bass. You can add a 7th onto it. You can make it a 6-9 chord. Nice. It's also very unlikely that if you're just playing quarter notes, that it's gonna sound that interesting. There's so much you can do. Just a simple little. That was a simple little variation off the top of my head, but I just added a little bit of simple melody into there. Often, like, you can play off your vocal melody and have little bits of that in the piano part. In the Patrick Watson song Lost With You, that's exactly what he does. The bottom hand is breaking up the chords, and the top hand is just outlining the vocal melody. There's 100 cigarettes on the ground, and our clothes are still hanging around. So anyways, think about interesting chord voicings and extensions instead of just playing triads all the time. Remember to break up your chords in interesting ways instead of just playing block quarter notes. And then add little bits of melody in your right hand, or even your left hand. So once you're sure that the part that you're playing is interesting and worthy of how good your song is, we then move into the sound design. Now I have a whole video that'll pop up in the corner of the screen on how to make MIDI pianos sound realistic. I show a few different techniques in that video, and I still stand by all of them. Basically the TLDR, or I guess TLDW, is that you can layer up multiple piano VSTs and like pan them around the stereo space to get just a more rich textured sound that you can get from a single VST. And also you can play the sound of the VST through your speakers and resample it either through like your phone or just like through your actual microphone, and then layer that back in with the VST. It just gives it a bit more of a sense of space. It's like you're sampling your room. But what's honestly more important than that is the source itself. So the VST that you're using. It's highly unlikely, no matter how much of a genius you are, that you'll be able to make like stock piano VSTs sound good. So here's just a few recommendations. Post Felt by Somerville Sounds is a beautiful sounding piano if you like the sound of the felt on the keys, and has really, really interesting like sound design capabilities if you want a bit more of a unique sort of otherworldly sound. Soft Piano in Labs by Spitfire Audio is a classic. Obviously that's for a very specific muted soft sound, but it is amazing and it's completely free. I've also used The Gentleman by Native Instruments and Piano Tech by Modart. They're good in certain contexts. I often go for one of those two if I want a bit of a brighter sound. But for this application, like sad shit, I don't know if I entirely recommend those two. I've saved the best for last though, because on my screen, and the VST that you heard in the previous clip when I was over at the piano is Noir by Native Instruments. I actually only got this plugin this year and it's just changed the game for me. I do a lot less of that like VST layering and room resampling and stuff, just because honestly, this plugin is so good. As you can see in like the image on it, it's sampled from a grand piano, but it was sampled in like a really small space, so it has that kind of like claustrophobic intimacy of an upright, but it's a grand piano. So that's all for sound selection and sound design for this video. Again, you can watch that other video if you want a bit more of an in-depth look at things. And funnily enough, the example I use in that other video is a different Patrick Watson cover on this channel. This channel's basically a Patrick Watson fan account, and it's going to continue to be because Patrick Watson is awesome. Just a quick interlude. I hate asking people to like and subscribe, but well, I'm doing it. If you get something out of these videos, then liking, commenting, subscribing is the best way to support me and the channel and allow me to make more of these videos in the future. Also, I make these videos because I'm a producer for indie artists. So if you maybe have a piano ballad like this and you find the recording and the producing of it just a little draining and uninspiring, the top link in the description is always to my website where you can hear some of my work and then get in touch and we can see if we're a good fit to work together. So step number 3 is everything else. Because honestly, there is a place for literally just one piano and vocal, but if you listen closely to a lot of your favorite piano ballads, there are other subtle layers that come in, or sometimes not so subtle layers that come in. You're seeing my DAW session right now, and as you can see, I tried to go as far with my own voice and my piano performance as possible, and then I just added some other subtle layers in there, just backing those up. But what I want to focus on for this video is what I did to the pianos. Because when you record MIDI as opposed to a real piano, you arguably have a couple advantages. One is that if you're not that great of a piano player like I am, you can edit your performance afterwards. When you open up your MIDI track, you can go in and you can adjust the velocity if you hit a note too hard, and you can even mess around with your timing and stuff. Like you could change the notes if you wanted to. It's much easier to edit MIDI than it is to edit like an actual audio file of a recorded piano. Trust me, I've done it. It's not fun. But if you want to get more creative with your like sound design and layering and stuff, having all the MIDI accessible to you like this can be a total game changer and opens up unlimited possibilities. In the bridge of this song, I took inspiration from the original and I layered up the piano with a bunch of different weird piano sounds and run those through like tape emulations and like frequency shifting and stuff to get just this really interesting sounding layered melody. So that sounds like this. So what I've done is I've literally Frankensteined the piano part in this little bridge section here. So the chords in the left hand are in the original piano track, and I've automated in this low pass filter so that the chords sound underwater. Meanwhile, I've taken the MIDI of the melody that I played on the piano, and I took it out of that main keyboard and I just pasted it onto a few different patterns. So I have another instance of Noir playing the melody, which is layered up with this tape piano from Labs and this Bartok pizzicato from Labs. Bartok pizzicato is a technique for string instruments where you do a really heavy pluck so that it kind of hits against the string and rattles. And also this instance of postcard piano, which is this kind of like taped, warped piano sound again. I added all these automation curves so that different processing happens at different times and you get this incredibly textured melody. And because I had access to the MIDI and I could split apart the performance like this, I was able to do this really, really easily. And of course you can do sound design to an actual recorded piano. To be fair, that's probably what Patrick Watson did in the original song, Lost With You, but most likely he would have had to record a bunch of different parts and it was just a lot more involved of a process. This I just did on my DAW right here with a MIDI keyboard, and you can do it too. So anyways, the beauty of recording a piano ballad like this on a MIDI keyboard is that your creativity is the only limit. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you got something out of that and that I've saved you a bit of the pain that I went through for a few years, never being able to get solo piano ballads to sound good. I apologize for the slow upload schedule. I've just been lucky enough to be really busy with a lot of really exciting production projects, but I have tons and tons of exciting content planned for the new year, so do stick around. But until next time, peace.